My millionaire mother-in-law destroyed my wedding dress with scissors and wine 1 week before my wedding, but I had security cameras. And at the reception, in front of 200 guests, I showed everyone who she really was, and what happened next left them all speechless. I'm 35 years old. I work for an airline. Well, I used to work as a flight attendant until recently, and I need to tell this story because what I went through with my mother-in-law basically became the most dramatic thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And that's saying something, because I've seen everything flying around the world. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Alexander like 4 years ago, I mean, when I was 31 and he was barely 22, and right from that moment his mother, Constance Blackwood, made it crystal clear that I wasn't welcome in her perfect world of rich people. Alexander is, how do I explain it? The only heir to a giant shipping company, one of those that has ships all over the world and moves millions of dollars. And I was a flight attendant who lived in a one-bedroom apartment and traveled economy class when I wasn't working. The first time I went to dinner at Constance's house, she literally asked me how much I made per year. Just like that, in front of Alexander and his father, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I just sat there not knowing what to say. Like, who does that? And Alexander had to step in and change the subject, but the tension was already there, that awkward atmosphere where you know someone hates you but they're being polite out of obligation. During the first 3 years that Alexander and I were dating, Constance did everything possible to break us up. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. She tried to set her son up with like 10 different girls, all from wealthy families, all with important last names, all educated at expensive universities. She criticized me every time she saw me, that my clothes were too casual, that my makeup was vulgar, that my way of speaking wasn't refined, basically anything she could use against me. There was one time she told me, in front of her entire family at Christmas, that flight attendants were basically flying waitresses, and she laughed as if she had made the most ingenious joke in the world. I just stood there with a forced smile, dying inside, while Alexander squeezed my hand under the table. But Alexander always defended me, Every time his mother attacked me, he confronted her, made it clear to her that I was his choice and that she had to accept it or lose her son. And I thought that eventually she would give up, that over time she would see that I truly loved her son and that I wasn't with him for his money. But no, Mrs. Constance Blackwood is one of those people who would rather die than admit they were wrong. About a year and a half ago, Alexander proposed to me. He did it on a flight I was working. He coordinated everything with my crew. It was super romantic. He got down on one knee in the aisle while I was serving drinks, and the whole plane started applauding. I cried, like never before. I said yes, obviously. And I thought this was the beginning of my happily ever after. Right? Well, no. Constance found out about our engagement and literally had a fit, or so Alexander told me. She called him screaming, telling him he was making the biggest mistake of his life, that I was a gold digger, that the age difference was unacceptable, that what would her friends say when they found out her son was marrying an old flight attendant. After that, Constance started with her attempts to sabotage our engagement in more active ways. First, she tried to convince Alexander to make me sign a super strict prenuptial agreement where basically I would have no right to anything if we got divorced. Alexander flatly refused, told her that if I had wanted his money I would have had 3 years to prove it. Then she tried to get me to quit my job, said that no wife of a Blackwood could be traveling around the world, that what would happen if Alexander needed me and I was in another country, that it was inappropriate for a married woman to be surrounded by men in hotels. That really bothered me because, my job doesn't define who I am as a partner, but to avoid more drama, I agreed to switch to an administrative position at the airline. Desk job, normal hours. I thought that would calm her down a bit. But no, nothing was enough for that woman. My own parents didn't help much either. To be honest, David and Patricia Morgan are good people. They raised me the best they could, but they've always been obsessed with appearances and with fitting in places where we probably don't fit. When I told them I was going to marry Alexander, they were happy about the money. I'm not going to lie, but they were also terrified of doing or saying something that would offend the Blackwood family. Every time Constance treated me badly, my parents told me to put up with it, not to cause problems, to think about the future I would have with Alexander, to tolerate my mother-in-law for the sake of my marriage. And I understood where they were coming from. But it also hurt that they didn't defend me. So we get to like 2 months ago, exactly 1 week before the wedding. I had been working with an incredible designer, Olivia Martinez, a girl I met on a flight years ago, who became my friend. She's a wedding dress designer, has her own small studio, but does beautiful work, and she designed my wedding dress from scratch. We spent months on this, choosing the perfect fabric, the design, the details, everything. The dress was, literally, the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. It was white silk with subtle embroidery on the bodice, long lace sleeves, a train that wasn't exaggerated but was elegant, simply perfect. The day Olivia delivered the finished dress to me, I was so excited that I took it straight home. Alexander was at work. He wasn't going to arrive until evening, and I wanted to try it on one last time in private. You know, have my excited bride moment in front of the mirror. I hung the dress in our bedroom very carefully, left it there in its protective cover, and decided to take a quick shower before trying it on. This is where everything went to hell. Turns out Constance had a copy of the key to our apartment, something Alexander had given her years ago when he lived alone and that we never thought to take away because, we never thought she would do something like this. While I was in the shower, Constance entered the house. I have no idea what she was doing there. She probably came to drop something off or to spy. I don't know. But the point is that she saw my wedding dress hanging in the bedroom, and something in her sick brain just shut off. When I got out of the shower, I heard a weird noise coming from the bedroom, like someone was moving things. I thought Alexander had come home early from work, so I came out of the bathroom with my towel on, and there she was, Constance, with scissors in her hand, cutting my wedding dress to pieces. I froze. Literally couldn't move or speak. I just watched as this woman destroyed something I had worked on for months. She didn't even see me at first. She was so focused on destroying every inch of fabric, and when she finally noticed me standing there, you know what she did? She laughed. She laughed and said, "Now you don't have a dress for your pathetic little wedding." And then she grabbed a bottle of red wine that was on the dresser, an expensive bottle that Alexander and I were saving for a special occasion, and poured it over what was left of the dress. I finally reacted and screamed at her to get out of my house. I was shaking with rage, like I had never felt so much fury in my life, and she just looked at me with that arrogant smile and said, "This is my building. Technically, I can be here whenever I want." And she left. Just like that, leaving me there with my destroyed dress on the floor and red wine everywhere. I sat on the floor and cried for I don't know how long, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour. Time completely stopped. All of Olivia's work, all the money I had saved for that dress, all my dreams of that perfect day, everything was destroyed on my bedroom floor. I called Alexander and I could barely speak. I just cried on the phone, and he left everything at his office and got home in 20 minutes, finding me still on the floor with my towel on and the remains of the dress scattered everywhere. Alexander was furious. I had never seen him that angry. He called his mother immediately and yelled at her on the phone, told her things I won't repeat here because they were very strong, and she just laughed on the other side of the line, basically admitting what she had done without any remorse. He told her he never wanted to see her again, that she had crossed a line that had no return, and she replied that fine, that if he insisted on marrying me then she would disinherit him. Alexander told her he didn't give a damn about her inheritance and hung up the phone. This is where the story gets, let's say, interesting. When I was picking up the pieces of the dress from the floor, I found my phone under a cushion on the sofa in our bedroom. I had been listening to a podcast while getting ready before the shower and left the phone there, and it turns out the podcast paused at some point but the voice recording app accidentally activated. I don't know how. I probably touched something without meaning to, and what matters is that my phone recorded everything. The entire scene of Constance coming in, cutting the dress, laughing, pouring the wine, her cruel comments, absolutely everything was recorded in a 15-minute audio file. When I realized this, something changed in me. I was no longer just sad or angry. I was calculating. I showed the audio to Alexander and he immediately said we should use it to get his mother in legal trouble. But I had a different idea. I told him not to do anything yet, to let her think she had gotten away with it. Alexander looked at me confused but trusted me, and I contacted Olivia that same night. Olivia almost cried when I told her what had happened. She had put so much love into that dress, and when I asked her if there was any way to save it or make a new one in a week, she said she would try. I sent her photos of all the pieces of the dress, every scrap of fabric I could find, and she said she would do the impossible. I also asked her to keep this in absolute secrecy, that no one could know we were repairing the dress, and she agreed. During that week, we acted as if everything was canceled. We told Constance, through messages because Alexander didn't want to talk to her directly, that the wedding would be postponed indefinitely because I was too devastated and needed time. Constance responded with a fake apology message, like, "I'm sorry you got upset over a simple dress," as if what she did was a minor accident. My parents also knew about the dress because I told them, and their reaction was to tell me to get over it, to get another dress, not to let this ruin my wedding. I didn't tell them anything about my plan because I knew they would try to stop me. They've always been the type to avoid conflict at all costs. Olivia worked like crazy during those 6 days. She managed to save some of the lace panels that weren't too damaged, completely replaced the silk, redid all the embroidery, and basically created a new dress that was identical to the original but better because she put even more detail into the finishes. And the day before the wedding, she sent me a photo of the finished dress and I cried again, but this time with happiness and also anticipation for what was to come. We didn't tell anyone that the wedding was still on, except for the absolutely necessary people, the event organizer, the priest, our closest friends, basically the people who needed to be there for everything to work. Everyone agreed to keep it secret, and some were even excited when I told them what I was planning to do. Most of Alexander's family, the cousins, the uncles, the people who had always been kind to me, were invited and knew the wedding was happening, but Constance had no idea. The wedding day came and I was nervous but also strangely calm, like when you know you're going to do something big and there's no turning back. I put on the repaired dress in a room at the hotel where the ceremony would take place. Olivia was there helping me, and when I saw myself in the mirror, I literally almost couldn't believe that this dress had been destroyed on my bedroom floor a week before. Alexander hadn't seen me yet. We decided to follow the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony, but I sent him a message telling him everything was ready and that I loved him, and he responded with like 15 heart emojis. The ceremony was planned for 4 in the afternoon in a beautiful place, a garden overlooking the sea. We had invited 200 people, including all of Alexander's family, my friends, my family, co-workers, basically all the important people in our lives. And yes, Constance was invited, because Alexander had told her a week before, when she thought the wedding was canceled, that if we changed our minds and decided to get married after all, she would be invited because he didn't want to create more family drama. She had said she wouldn't go anyway because she didn't support our marriage, but Alexander knew that her pride wouldn't allow her to miss the opportunity to see if we were really getting married or not. So we knew she would show up. And sure enough, there she was. When I arrived at the ceremony venue in the car, I saw Constance sitting in one of the front rows with a pretentious purple dress and a huge hat, talking to some relatives and probably saying who knows what things about me. The music started, the garden doors opened, and I started walking down the aisle with my father, who, by the way, was super nervous about being there with all these rich people, and I saw the faces of all the guests. Some were surprised that the wedding was happening, some smiled excitedly, but the face I wanted to see was Constance's, and when she saw me walking towards the altar with my dress perfectly intact, her expression changed from arrogance to absolute shock in 2 seconds. I saw her turn pale, her mouth opened slightly, and she sat there completely rigid while I passed by her smiling. Alexander saw me and his eyes filled with tears. He knew what this dress represented. It wasn't just a pretty dress. It was a symbol that I wasn't going to let his mother destroy me. The ceremony was beautiful. We cried. We laughed. We officially got married. And then came the reception in the same garden but in a different area with tables and a dance floor. During dinner, there was the moment for speeches, when the groom's father speaks, the maid of honor speaks, that kind of thing. I had coordinated with the DJ to give me the microphone after the official speeches because I had something to say. And Alexander knew I was going to do something, but didn't know exactly what, because I told him I wanted it to be a surprise for him too. I stood in front of the 200 people with the microphone in my hand and started by saying something like, "Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to celebrate this special day with us. Alexander and I are very happy to have you here." And then I said, "Before we continue with the party, there's something I would like to share with you. A little story about what happened last week that almost ruined this day." People went quiet, curious, and I took out my phone and connected it to the sound system the DJ had set up. I said, This is a recording of what happened in my bedroom exactly 1 week ago, and I pressed play. The audio started playing through all the speakers in the garden. You could hear the sound of scissors cutting fabric, Constance's voice saying horrible things about me, her evil laugh, the sound of wine being poured, her final insults before leaving, everything. The garden was in absolute silence except for the recording, and I watched as Constance's face went from white to red, while all the guests turned to look at her with expressions of horror and disgust. When the recording ended, which lasted like 5 minutes of the full 15 because I edited only the important part, I said into the microphone, "That's the kind of person my mother-in-law is. Someone who entered my house without permission and destroyed my wedding dress a week before my wedding because she can't accept that her son loves me. But as you can see, I didn't give up. My incredible friend Olivia repaired the dress, and here I am, married to the love of my life, and there's nothing anyone can do to change it." But what happened next was chaotic, in a way I hadn't completely anticipated. Constance got up from her chair screaming like crazy, saying that I was a liar, that the recording was edited, that I had forced her to do that, things that made no sense whatsoever. She started walking towards me, and I swear I thought she was going to try to hit me. She was furious, yelling obscenities in front of all these elegant people who had probably never heard those words at an event like this. Alexander's father, who had always been neutral in all this drama, stood up, and along with 2 of Alexander's uncles, they literally had to grab her and take her out of the garden while she kept screaming. Alexander was standing there next to me in shock. I don't think he expected his mother to react so violently. And then he hugged me and whispered in my ear, "You're amazing. I love you so much." Some guests started applauding. Others were clearly uncomfortable. My parents were mortified at their table, and the rest of Alexander's family was between surprised and satisfied because several of them had also suffered Constance's horrible behavior for years. The party continued after that drama, but obviously the atmosphere had changed. It was no longer a normal reception. It was the reception where the bride publicly exposed her psychotic mother-in-law. A lot of people came to talk to me afterwards. Some of Alexander's relatives thanked me for finally putting Constance in her place, told me stories of terrible things she had done to them too, and I felt validated in a strange way. Like all that humiliation I had endured for years was finally worth it, because now everyone saw who she really was. My parents confronted me after the reception, when we were already at the hotel, and told me that what I did was shameful, that I publicly humiliated Constance, and that was going to have consequences. I told them that she humiliated me first, that she destroyed something that was important to me, and that I only showed the truth. My mom said I should have been the bigger person, that I have let it go. And I responded that I was tired of being the bigger person, while other people walked all over me. We didn't talk much after that. They left the hotel upset, and to this day, things with them are kind of tense. Alexander, for his part, made a decision that same night. He told me that after hearing again what his mother said in that recording, the insults she used against me, the malice in her voice, he could no longer have a relationship with her, not even a tense or distant relationship. He just didn't want her to be part of his life anymore. He sent her a long message telling her that she was cut from his life completely, that he didn't want to see or talk to her again, and that actions have consequences. Constance responded with another long message full of excuses and manipulation, but Alexander deleted it without reading it completely. The day after the wedding, when we were still at the hotel before leaving for our honeymoon, Constance showed up. I don't know how. She knew which room we were in. She probably bribed someone at reception, but she knocked on the door like crazy at 8 in the morning. Alexander opened, and she immediately started begging him to leave me, that she would get him a lawyer to annul the marriage, that I had manipulated him, that all of this was my fault. Alexander told her to leave, and that if she showed up again, he would call security, and she yelled at him that if he didn't divorce me within 6 months, she would disinherit him and cut him completely from the family and the business. Alexander told her, "Go ahead, do it. I don't care about your money," and closed the door in her face. I was there listening to everything, and honestly, I felt bad for him, because no matter how horrible your mother is, she's still your mother, and cutting her out of your life isn't easy. But he hugged me and told me that the only thing that mattered to him was our life together, that his mother had had years to change and never did, and that he wasn't going to live his life trying to please someone who would never be satisfied with anything he did. In the following weeks, like 80% of Alexander's family took our side. Some of them sent messages to Constance telling her that what she did was unforgivable. Others just stopped talking to her, and she was left pretty socially isolated. Constance tried to do damage control on social media, posted things vaguely talking about ungrateful daughters-in-law and betrayed mothers, but several people who were at the wedding commented telling what really happened, so her strategy didn't work very well. She followed through on her threat to disinherit Alexander. A month after the wedding, we received a letter from her lawyer saying that Alexander had been removed from the will and that he no longer had any rights to the family property or business. Alexander read it, shrugged, and said, "That's fine. I have my own career anyway. He works in finance, has his own money. We didn't depend on Constance's money to live, so it really didn't affect us as much as she thought it would." What Alexander did do, and this surprised me in a good way, was organize a second small reception like 2 months later, with only 30 people, our closest friends and the family that supported us. He called it our real reception, because he said the first one had been too dramatic and he wanted to have a quiet celebration where we were just happy without any family drama. It was beautiful, more intimate, and I finally felt like I had the wedding moment I always wanted. We also went on our honeymoon. Alexander surprised me with a month-long trip through Europe, something I had dreamed of doing my whole life, but never had the money or time for. We visited Italy, France, Spain, Greece, places I had only seen in passing during layovers when I worked as a flight attendant. And this time, I could really enjoy them with my husband. It was perfect, and during that month we didn't think about Constance even once. Now, like 3 months after all this, things are pretty good. Alexander and I are happy. We live in the same apartment. He changed the locks, obviously, and we're building our life together without his mother's interference. Constance tried to contact him a couple more times, but he has maintained his firm decision not to have contact with her. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by exposing everything publicly at the wedding, if I should have handled things more privately. But then I remember everything she put me through for years, all the times she humiliated me, and I realize I don't regret it. My parents eventually calmed down. They still think I went too far, but they've accepted that what's done is done, and are trying to have a normal relationship with me and with Alexander. Alexander's family that supports us visits regularly, we have dinners, celebrate birthdays, and it's strange but nice to have a family that really loves and accepts you, without conditions. Will Constance change someday? Probably not. Will Alexander reconcile with her eventually? He says no, and I believe him, but I also understand that it's his decision, and I'm going to support him in whatever he decides to do. For now, we're fine, we're happy, and that's what matters. And every time I see my wedding dress stored in the closet, I don't just see a dress. I see a reminder that I'm not going to let anyone walk all over me, no matter how much money they have or what last name they carry.